Hello again. This is a round 4 game in the Wachusett Chess Club Championship of 2019. Playing white is Pulya and black is Bruce Felton. At this point, Bruce has a 3-0 record and has opportunity to play for the championship depending on how the next couple rounds go. So you can see by the analysis here on Lichess that it was a pretty clean game. One blunder by Ritvic, which doesn't look like a big one, and average center-pawn loss of 11 for each. That's really clean. And let's see how it happened. D4 was the first move, and we end up with a King's Indian. In these positions, black has some chances, but white is the one playing for a win in a lot of these variations. As an indication of how the game eventually went, Ritvic traded off the queens right away and pinned the knight to the rook. It's a fairly effective pin, but you might think that h6 would be a pretty reasonable option to either force the trade on f6 or back the bishop up. In fact, let's see if that's something of an option the engine thinks. No, it says just develop. So that makes some sense. So Bruce did just develop, and a pretty common move here is rook d1, which is pretty good and results in pretty good result for black. The engine and the book, opening book, says rook f8 is the move, at which point you should expect to see maybe an h-pawn advance or the knight jumping into d5. But that's not what happened. Instead, Bruce played rook e8, and it results in a couple of possibilities in terms of a fork here on c7. Bruce is overprotecting the e5 pawn and has gotten out of the pin from the bishop. But the number one move you can see is knight b5, which means that one of the rooks has to move again. And so take your pick. You can follow the top move, in which case it's a pretty good position considering material has come off for white. The c7 pawn is available, and then how do you kick that knight out of there? Do you maybe play back your knight to e8, or do you just let it sit there until you can consolidate? None of that happened because, as you saw, Bruce played rook e8, and instead Ritvic played what the engine considered a blunder, and it's probably just because it was a couple of pawns difference in the evaluation. He removed what is possibly a good piece for him, because the black bishop, because this black bishop on g7 doesn't have a lot of scope. If it ever were to get some scope, you might want a way to trade it off bishop for bishop. In any case, right now the position looks a little consolidated. Another possibility, though, here is to still play knight to b5 and force black to do something with his rooks again. What does the Stockfish say about that? It says even, as opposed to before that, still even. So a lot of the tension's out of the position, and the way Ritvic chose to play it was knight to d5. Now, another thing that I was considering is, would knight to d2 and then, let's just say, pass for black, pass again. White has been able to set up something of a Maroczy bind pawn structure, but there's not a lot of scope, opportunity to sink a knight in on d5 because black has c6 available all the time. This would happen in Sicilian where c pawn is gone already. Obviously, if we can get to this position, then it doesn't help white because, as the engine showed, c6 is an option, and he also might be able to move his knight from h5 to h5 and then to f4, further causing another loosening on white's pawn structure. So none of this happened. It was just an idea of maybe some reorganization that may have happened. Instead, Ritвik played knight to d5, and the threat of the fork is there, but it also could cost the e-pawn. What does Stockfish think? No, he says don't risk the exchange. It says just take it off. The problem with this for white is that it gives black the f5 break right away. This is a little advantage for white, but it results in hitting the base of the pawn chain. And at the end of this, because f3 is not available, white is going to have three islands, and so will black. So there's a little bit of imbalance happening. Yeah, I don't know if h6 is necessary because the knight is coming to e6 no matter what. But in any case, maybe centralizing a rook or maybe staking out some space on the queen side would have been good. But at this point, there's not a lot happening. From here on, the engine evaluation is basically flat, and it's hard to find a plan for either player. These central passer's nice, and a nice 4-2 on the queen side is nice, but how do you get through with the opposite colored bishops? I couldn't figure it out. Nice move there to keep b5 from happening, but Bruce suggests that he's going to insist on it, and when he does, the last of the rooks come off. So from here, I think that was a pretty decent move because you don't want to let the king get to d5 and push c4. So instead, Ritвik played b3 such that the bishop would be anchored here. The king can't make any progress. Maybe the bishop can get behind the pawns. And instead, there was, after this, just a dance, basically. Not much can happen with the opposite colored bishops. Both players can cover every entry square for the king, and no king can get to any pawn weaknesses. If white tried to go up for the g5 pawn, well, this bishop just covers it, and this is a dead draw. And after who knows how long, several moves, and who knows how much time, they agreed to it. But the result was that this was Bruce's first draw and first non-win of the championship, and it, in a very little way, brings him back to the pack in terms of somebody can now try to catch up and take the championship lead. And there you have it. So thanks for watching.